Emma stood at the church door in her beautiful white dress, and her heart felt like it was breaking into a million pieces. The flowers were perfect. The candles were glowing. The music was playing softly. Everything was ready. Everything except the one person who was supposed to be there. Her groom, Michael. He never came. Emma waited and waited. The guests whispered behind their hands. Her mother cried quietly in the front row. Her father's face turned red with anger. The minutes felt like hours. The hours felt like forever. Finally, Emma's father stood up and said the words that made her whole world crash down. There will be no wedding today. The guests left quickly, avoiding her eyes. Some looked sad. Others looked curious, like they wanted to know all the gossip. Emma heard someone whisper, "Poor girl, he left her for someone else." Another person said, "I heard he ran away this morning." Emma stood there in her white dress, frozen like a statue. She couldn't cry. She couldn't move. She just felt empty. When the last person left, Emma finally walked outside. The sky had turned dark and angry, just like her heart. Thunder rumbled. Then the rain came pouring down, soaking her dress, her hair, her everything. She didn't care. She stood there in the rain, letting it wash over her. Maybe the rain could wash away this terrible day. Maybe it could wash away the shame and the pain. That's when she saw him. An old beggar sat on the church steps, getting wet just like her. He had dirty clothes, messy gray hair, and wrinkled skin. But when he looked at her, his eyes were different. They were warm. They were kind. They didn't judge her or feel sorry for her. They just understood. "Bad day?" the old man asked softly. Emma almost laughed. "Bad day?" That was like calling the ocean a little puddle. "The worst day of my whole life," she said, her voice shaking. The beggar nodded slowly. Sometimes the worst days lead to the best surprises. Emma looked at the strange old man sitting in the rain. He had nothing, no home, no money, no fancy clothes. But he wasn't running away from her like everyone else. He was just sitting there, keeping her company in the storm. Something wild happened inside Emma's heart. Something crazy. Something that made no sense at all. "Will you marry me?" she heard herself say. The words came out of her mouth before her brain could stop them. Had she gone mad? Was she broken inside? Maybe. Probably. Yes. The beggar's eyes went wide. "What?" "I have a wedding dress," Emma said, feeling tears mixed with rain on her face. "I have a church. I have everything except someone who will stay. Will you stay?" The old man stared at her for a long, long moment. Then, very slowly, he smiled. It was the saddest kind of smile Emma had ever seen. "Yes," he said, "I will stay." And right there on the wet church steps, with no guests and no music and no flowers, Emma married the beggar. There was no ring, no priest. No, I do. Just two broken people standing together in the rain, holding hands. Emma didn't know why she did it. She just knew she couldn't face her empty apartment alone. She couldn't face the questions, the looks, the pity, at least with this strange old man. She wouldn't be alone. They walked through the rainy streets together. People stared. Some pointed. Some laughed. Emma heard someone shout, "The bride married a beggar. She's gone crazy." Maybe she had. The beggar, her husband now, how strange, took her to a tiny shelter under a bridge. It smelled bad and looked worse, but it was dry. He gave her his only blanket, even though he was shivering. "You should keep it," Emma said. "You need it more than me." "A husband takes care of his wife," the old man said with that sad smile again. Emma fell asleep on the cold ground, wrapped in a smelly blanket, wondering if this was all a nightmare. Maybe she would wake up and Michael would be there, apologizing. Maybe none of this was real. But when she woke up, the nightmare was still going. Except the beggar was gone. Emma sat up confused. The shelter under the bridge was empty. Had he left her too? Was she alone again? Then she saw it. A folded piece of paper on the ground where the beggar had slept. Her hands shook as she picked it up. The handwriting was beautiful, like art. "Dear wife, follow the path by the river until you reach the old mansion with stone lions at the gate. I will wait for you there. Come alone. Come today. Everything will make sense soon. Your husband. Emma read the note 3 times. A mansion? Stone lions? This dirty old beggar lived in a mansion? Nothing made sense. Nothing at all. But something inside Emma, maybe curiosity, maybe madness, maybe destiny, made her stand up. She was still wearing her ruined wedding dress, now dirty and torn. She must have looked crazy. She didn't care anymore. Emma walked to the river and followed the path, just like the note said. Her feet hurt. Her dress dragged in the mud. But she kept walking. She had to know. She had to understand. After what felt like forever, Emma saw something that made her stop breathing. A mansion. A huge, beautiful, mysterious mansion sat at the end of the path. And at the front gate, just like the note said, 2 stone lions stared at her with cold, carved eyes. Emma's heart pounded so hard she could hear in her ears. What was happening? Who was the beggar really? Why did he bring her here? She walked up to the giant wooden door and knocked. The sound echoed like thunder. The door opened slowly, creaking like something from a scary movie. And standing there in the doorway was a young man. He was tall and handsome, with clean clothes and kind eyes she recognized, eyes she had seen before. "Hello, Emma," the young man said, smiling that same sad smile. "I know you have many questions. Please come inside. It's time I told you the truth about who I really am and why I've been waiting for you my whole cursed life." Emma's mouth fell open. Her mind spun in circles. The beggar, the young man, they were the same person. But how? How was that possible? She stepped inside the mansion, and the door closed behind her with a heavy boom. Her new life, her strange, impossible, magical new life, had just begun. Emma stepped into the mansion, and her breath caught in her throat. Everything sparkled. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling like frozen stars. The floors were so shiny she could see her reflection. Beautiful paintings covered the walls. It was like stepping into a fairy tale. But Emma wasn't looking at any of that. She was staring at the young man in front of her, the man who had been an old beggar just hours ago. "How?" she whispered. "How is this possible?" The young man's face was sad, but also hopeful. He gestured to a velvet chair. "Please sit down. This story is long, and it's strange, and you might not believe me, but every word is true." Emma sat down slowly, never taking her eyes off him. Her wet, muddy wedding dress left marks on the beautiful chair, but she didn't care. She needed answers. The young man took a deep breath. "My name is Alexander. 20 years ago, I was a prince." "A prince?" Emma's voice came out as a squeak. "Yes, and I was terrible." Alexander looked down at his hands. "I had everything, money, power, a castle, servants. But I was cruel. I laughed at poor people. I threw rocks at beggars. I thought I was better than everyone else because I was born rich." Emma felt a shiver run down her back. She could hear rain hitting the mansion windows. It sounded like tiny fingers tapping. "Want to get in?" Alexander continued. "One day, an old woman came to my castle. She was dressed in rags, and she asked for food. I laughed at her. I told my guards to throw her out in the rain. But she wasn't really an old woman." "What was she?" Emma asked, even though part of her didn't want to know. "A fairy, a powerful one." Alexander's voice shook. She revealed her true form, beautiful and terrifying. Her eyes glowed like fire. She pointed at me and said, "You judge people by what they look like on the outside. Now you will learn what it feels like." Emma's hands gripped the chair arms. "What did she do?" "She cursed me," Alexander said. "She turned me into an old beggar. She took away my youth, my home, everything. She said I would stay that way forever, unless someone married me not for my looks or my money, but for my soul, for who I really was inside. But..." Emma's mind was racing. "I married you because I was sad and angry. I married you because I wanted to do something crazy. I didn't marry you for your soul." Alexander looked at her with those kind eyes, the same eyes that had looked at her on the church steps. "Didn't you? Think about it, Emma. You could have gone home. You could have hidden in your room. But you saw me, really saw me, when everyone else looked away. You held my hand when I had nothing to offer you. You showed me kindness when the whole world had shown you cruelty. Emma felt tears coming again. I just didn't want to be alone. That's the most honest reason anyone has ever had, Alexander said softly. And it was enough. Your compassion was real. Your heart was pure. The curse broke the moment you said yes to me on those church steps. Emma looked around the mansion again. So all of this is yours. Ours, Alexander corrected. You're my wife. Everything I have is yours now. It was too much. Too strange. Too fast. Yesterday, Emma was planning a normal wedding to a normal man. Today, she was in a mansion married to a cursed prince who used to be a beggar. I need some air, Emma said, standing up. Of course. Alexander pointed to a hallway. There's a beautiful garden through those doors. Take all the time you need. Emma walked through the mansion in a daze. Everything felt like a dream. The garden was incredible, full of roses and fountains and trees that seemed to whisper secrets. She sat on a stone bench and tried to think. Was this real? Was Alexander telling the truth? Could magic actually exist? Days passed. Emma stayed in the mansion because, honestly, where else could she go? Back to her empty apartment, where she'd planned a wedding that never happened? Back to people who would ask a million questions? Alexander was kind. He gave her beautiful rooms. He never pressured her or made her uncomfortable. He was patient and gentle, like he understood she needed time. Slowly, Emma started to believe him. Slowly, she started to feel something. Not love, not yet, but something warm and real and growing. One evening, 2 weeks after the wedding that wasn't supposed to be, Emma walked into the main hall and stopped cold. There was a new painting on the wall, a huge painting in a golden frame. And in the painting was Alexander, but not the young, handsome Alexander. It was Alexander as the old beggar, sitting on church steps in the rain. Emma's blood went cold. Alexander, she called out. He came running. When he saw the painting, his face went white as snow. No, he whispered. No, no, no. What's wrong? Emma asked, fear creeping into her voice like ice. Alexander reached out and touched the painting. His hand shook. At the bottom of the frame, words appeared, written in letters that glowed red like fire. What is given can be taken away. Emma grabbed Alexander's arm. What does that mean? Alexander turned to her, and for the first time, she saw real fear in his eyes. The curse. It's not fully broken. It's just sleeping. Sleeping? Emma's heart pounded. How do we wake it up? Or, how do we make sure it stays asleep? Alexander sat down hard, like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. The fairy told me that the curse would only truly end if the love that freed me stayed pure. If your heart ever filled with doubt, greed, or regret, the curse would come back, and it would be worse than before. Emma felt dizzy. Doubt? Regret? Alexander, I barely know you. We've been married 2 weeks. I know. He looked at her with such sadness. I'm sorry. I should have told you. I should have explained everything. Yes, you should have. Emma's voice rose. She felt angry, scared, confused, all at once. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She walked through the quiet mansion, her footsteps echoing. Something felt wrong. The air felt heavy and cold. She passed a mirror in the hallway and stopped. There were cracks in it, tiny cracks, spreading like spider webs across the glass. But the mirror had been perfect that morning. She was sure of it. Emma's heart raced. She kept walking and heard something, a whisper, soft and cold, coming from the shadows. Doubt, doubt, doubt. She spun around. Nothing there, just darkness and the sound of her own breathing. Emma ran to Alexander's room and burst through the door without knocking. He was standing at the window, looking out at the stars. Alexander, something's wrong. The mirrors are cracking. I heard whispers. What's happening? He turned to face her, and Emma gasped. He looked older. Not much, just a little. But there were lines on his face that weren't there before. Gray streaks in his hair. Tired shadows under his eyes. It's starting, Alexander said quietly. The curse is waking up. Why? What did I do? Emma felt panic rising in her chest. You didn't do anything wrong, Alexander said, but doubt is already here. You said it yourself. You barely know me. You're wondering if you made a mistake. You're questioning everything. And the curse, it feeds on that. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. So what do we do? How do we stop it? Alexander walked over to her and gently took her hands. There's only one way to end the curse forever. But Emma, you're not going to like it. Tell me, she said. Please. Alexander's voice was barely a whisper. One of us has to let go. One of us has to choose to release the other from this bond. It has to be a completely selfless choice, made out of pure love, asking for nothing in return. Emma stared at him. You mean one of us has to leave? Yes, but that's not fair. Emma cried. We just found each other. I know. Alexander's own tears fell now. I know, and I'm so sorry. The mansion groaned around them. More mirrors cracked. The lights flickered. Cold wind blew through the halls, even though all the windows were closed. Emma looked into Alexander's eyes, those kind, gentle eyes that had seen her on the worst day of her life and chosen to stay. And she realized something that made her heart break and heal at the same time. She loved him. She actually loved him. And love, real love, means wanting the other person to be free. The mansion was falling apart. Every day, more cracks appeared in the walls. Windows shattered for no reason. Beautiful paintings turned dark and twisted. The flowers in the garden died overnight, turning black as coal. And Alexander was disappearing. Each morning, he looked older, more tired, more like the beggar Emma had met on the church steps. His hair turned completely gray. His hands shook. His voice grew weak. Emma stayed by his side every moment. She held his hand. She brought him soup. She read him stories. She refused to leave him, even as the curse grew stronger and stronger. You have to go, Alexander whispered one night. They were sitting in his room, listening to the mansion groan and creak around them. Emma, please. If you stay, the curse will take you too. I don't care, Emma said fiercely. I'm not leaving you. I love you. Alexander smiled, that same sad, beautiful smile. I love you too. That's why you have to go. No. Emma's voice cracked. There has to be another way. But deep down, she knew there wasn't. She'd known for days now. Maybe she'd always known. The fairy's curse was clear. Only selfless love could break it forever. And selfless love means letting go, even when every part you want to hold on. Emma looked around the room. In the corner, she saw something that made her heart stop. A mirror. And in the mirror, she didn't see herself. She saw the fairy, the one who had cursed Alexander 20 years ago. The fairy's eyes glowed like fire, and she was watching, waiting, testing. She's here, Emma whispered. She's watching us. Alexander followed her gaze and nodded weakly. She's always been watching. This was always the final test. Emma stood up. Her legs felt shaky, but she walked a mirror and looked straight into those burning eyes. What do you want? Emma asked. What do I have to do? The fairy's voice filled the room, beautiful and terrible at the same time. You know what you must do, child. Love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go. Tears poured down Emma's face. But I just found him. We just found each other. This isn't fair. Life isn't fair, the fairy said, not unkindly. But love can be stronger than curses, stronger than magic, stronger than time itself. Show me that your love is real. Emma turned back to Alexander. He was barely able to sit up now. The curse was eating him alive, turning him back into the old beggar, or maybe something worse. She knew what she had to do. She'd always known. Emma walked over to Alexander and knelt beside his bed. She took his cold, wrinkled hands in hers. Alexander, she said softly, I release you. Emma, no. I release you from our marriage, Emma continued, her voice breaking. I release you from any bond between us. I let you go, not because I don't love you, but because I do. I love you more than anything, and I want you to be free. I want you to be happy. Even if even if that means being happy without me." Alexander's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." Emma leaned forward and kissed his forehead gently. "Go. Be free. Live the life you deserve. And know that somewhere always I will love you." The words hurt more than anything Emma had ever felt. It was like ripping her own heart out of her chest. But she meant every word. A blinding light filled the room. So bright Emma had to close her eyes. She felt wind rushing around her, warm and wild. She heard Alexander cry out, but she couldn't see him through the light. Then silence. When Emma opened her eyes, Alexander was gone. The bed was empty. The room was empty. The mansion had stopped shaking. The cracks in the walls sealed up like magic. The darkness lifted. Everything was still and quiet and perfect. But Alexander wasn't there. Emma fell to the floor and cried. She cried until she had no tears left. She cried until the sun came up and painted the room gold. She cried until her voice was gone. He was free. The curse was broken. But he was gone. And Emma had never felt so alone in her entire life. Years later, Emma never left the mansion. It was hers now. Alexander had made sure of that before he disappeared. She lived there quietly, simply. She didn't keep servants. She didn't throw parties. Instead, she opened the gates to the poor and the hungry. She gave food to beggars. She welcomed strangers. She showed everyone the same kindness that Alexander had shown her on those church steps so long ago. The town called her the Lady of the Mansion. They told stories about her, about the bride who married a beggar and found magic. Some people said she was crazy. Others said she was a saint. Emma didn't care what they said. She just remembered, and she loved, and she waited, even though she didn't know what she was waiting for. 10 years passed, then 20. Emma grew older, but she never married again. How could she? Her heart belonged to a man who had vanished into light. One day, when Emma was no longer young, she was working in the garden. Her hair had turned silver. Her hands were wrinkled, but her eyes were still kind. She heard the gate creak open. Emma looked up and saw an old man standing there. He was thin and dirty, dressed in rags. A beggar. Her heart squeezed. Beggars came to her gate every day, but this one, something about him felt familiar. "Please," the old man said, "could you spare some food? I've traveled so far and I'm very hungry." Emma smiled. "Of course. Come in. You're always welcome here." She brought him bread and soup. She gave him clean water. She sat with him while he ate, just like someone had once sat with her in the rain. The old man looked at her with eyes that were warm and kind and deeply, deeply sad. "You have a beautiful home," he said softly. "Thank you," Emma replied. "It was a gift from someone I love very much." "Tell me about him," the beggar said. So Emma did. She told the story of the worst day of her life that turned into the best day. She told him about the curse and the mansion and the impossible choice. She told him everything. When she finished, the old man was crying. "That," he whispered, "is the most beautiful love story I've ever heard." Emma felt tears on her own cheeks, too. "Yes, it was." The beggar stood up slowly. "I should go, but before I leave, I have something for you." He reached into his ragged coat and pulled out a single white rose. It was perfect, not a single torn petal. It glowed softly, like it held light inside. "This is for you," the beggar said, "from someone who never stopped loving you, who never forgot you, who thinks about you every single day." Emma's hand shook as she took the rose. "Alexander?" The beggar smiled, that sad, beautiful smile she remembered so well. "True love never dies, Emma. It just changes form. Sometimes we have to say goodbye, so the people we love can learn to fly. You set me free. You saved me. And I will always, always love you for that." "Wait." Emma reached for him, but he was already walking away. "Please, don't go. Stay." The beggar turned back one last time. "I can't stay. The curse is broken, but the rules are clear. I can visit, but I cannot remain. This is the price of freedom." But Emma Every kindness you show, every stranger you help, every meal you share, I feel it. I'm there in every act of love you do. We're never really apart. And then he was gone, vanished into the sunlight, like he was never there at all. Emma stood in her garden, holding the white rose, crying and smiling at the same time. She understood now. Love wasn't about holding on. It wasn't about being together every second. Sometimes love meant letting go. Sometimes it meant sacrifice. Sometimes it meant saying goodbye so the other person could be truly free. But that didn't mean the love died. Love never dies. It just transforms into something bigger, something pure, something eternal. Emma pressed the white rose to her heart. I love you too, she whispered to the empty air. Always. The rose glowed brighter, warm against her chest, like a heartbeat. And Emma knew, deep in her soul, that somewhere, somehow, Alexander heard her. Love had won. Not the way she expected, not the way she wanted, but in the way it needed to. And that, Emma realized, was the most magical thing of all. If you enjoyed this story, please share it with someone who believes in the magic of true love. Subscribe for more tales that touch the heart and lift the soul. Remember, the greatest loves are the ones that set us free.